Should we give a minute or two?
We are now live and we do have 3 attendees.
Okay.
I think you can go, John.
All right. Good evening. Thank you all for joining in this short discussion of our wastewater system project that's we hope to get ramped up here in 2021. This is a public meeting to fulfill a requirement by the USDA, which is one of the entities we're applying to for financial assistance. This is a wastewater system rehabilitation project. It's a result of several years of declining wastewater plant and sewer system performance, and a system-wide study that was completed 1 year ago. The study was conducted to identify areas in the system that needed to be prioritized, as well as solutions for some of those problem areas. Some of the things that were prioritized include wastewater plant aeration replacement, some work on our lift station, a dewatering well down at the plant that's not functioning properly. And primarily the project will focus on our collections system. That's actually our sewer piping, which was began to be installed around 1904. And it's primarily clay pipe. There are many damaged sections there. And we've also got some manholes that need to be either replaced or lined. This project will focus on the plant rehabilitation and lining or replacement of sewer pipes and manholes as needed. And we've already, like I said, we've already identified most of the areas in the system that need work immediately. Town staff and our engineers have prepared an application to the USDA for $4 million in grant and loan funding for these projects. It is unknown at this time how much funding we will get or how it will be split between grants and loans. Grants being you can use money that you do not have to repay, and loans which will require debt service. So we're hoping that we can maximize our grant potential and take on the least amount of debt possible. And to that effect, the town trustees will be given the opportunity to review the outcome of the application before we make any financial commitments or project commitments. But I would like to emphasize that this maintenance is critical for compliance, for the health of the river, and also for the functionality of our sewer system. That's a brief overview. I could get a lot more detailed than that, but I think that that's sufficient for now. And I could open up the meeting to questions or comments.
For the attendees, if you press *9 to raise your hand, we will promote you to a panelist so you can speak.
Any questions or comments from trustees? Discussion.
Trustee Wiegert.
I think, I think we all know how vital this service is for the community, and I think it's our utmost responsibility to keep it in good working order. And then especially for those who want to see the town grow and support a larger tourism population, we really need to have a well-functioning services in order to support that. And I know this has been happening for a few years now, and I really commend our staff for taking this on. This is a huge project, and this is going to be excellent for the citizens and the visitors of Silverton.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment to thank John Seitz, for the incredible amount of work. This is a big grant, very detailed, very technical, and he's done a terrific job leading the charge here to get this thing submitted.
Thank you. As I said before, this meeting is a requirement of the USDA. We get it out there in the public so people know that we're planning a big project and then we're interested in spending some money. And no doubt about it, the town will be into this project for some skin, and we're going to be spending some money on a project like this, but it's critical. And there will be a lot more talk about this project as we go along. This is just to open it up to the public, make sure that those that care are clear on what we're trying to accomplish, and review any comments. And if there aren't a lot more comments, we could close, but we can continue to discuss it amongst ourselves, or see if anyone in the public wants to come back in.
We have Molly.
Got her hand up.
Molly, if you press *6, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, all. Thanks, John, for doing all this. This is much needed. Big concern. Is there anything else that needs to fall in line for all of this to happen?
The primary thing that we need, as you know, is funding. A project of this magnitude financially would be impossible for our ratepayers. So we're reaching out to the USDA first, and we will likely follow up with a grant request from DOLA. And if things fall in line and we're very fortunate, we may be able to match over 50% over this project. And I must say that we have a fallback. If we can't get the full amount, even with $2 million, we could do a lot of money, a lot of positive work towards fixing some of our more serious problems, and look down the road to complete the project. But this project with this dollar amount will essentially rehabilitate our entire sewer system, or close to it. And that is, it might not be like having a brand new sewer system, but it'd be pretty close. So we're trying to get as much done as we can now, and then we can basically forget about it other than maintenance for the next 50 to 100 years. But to answer your question again, it's all about trying to get the funding for this with the least amount of impact on our ratepayers.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, this is a much needed project for our future, and I appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Would it be okay if I share a quick comment?
Sure.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I echo Trustee Wiegert and Barella's gratitude for Mr. Ryder's gratitude for your work on the project. And I just think our town is in really good hands with you as the captain of this ship. And that feels really good. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to ask this question because it is so early in the process, but I guess I'm just curious if there's any issue with, so like, let's say the backup plan needs to happen and it needs to kind of go slower rather than from like the bigger scope if something didn't come through. Is there an issue with starting on something earlier in the phase that would be kind of compromising to a different approach to the project, which would be kind of like a bigger vision and then tackling it as a bigger vision versus like a smaller step thing, smaller step project?
That's a good question. The stuff going on down at the wastewater plant is only about $250,000. That needs to happen. But then after that, we're pretty much free to start tackling the worst sewer pipe sections. So let's say we get $2 million, we put $250,000 towards the plant, and then we put 1.75 to the very worst areas in our sewer system. And that would not affect, you could do that piece by piece. We could, and I would expect from the timing of the funding that we would probably start this project at mid to late summer and work on as much as we can, and then finish it the following year. But to answer your question, we have a lot of flexibility on the timing and what resources we can throw at it. So if we can only put $2 million towards it, that's still a great positive for us, and it would not affect the future outlay of the project negatively.
Great, nice. Thanks, John.
Well, this is looking like it could be a short meeting. I really appreciate all the positivity. I believe that we will have met our requirement. We have had a public meeting. If we don't have any other comments, or maybe we could give a few more minutes, I'm glad to use the full half hour. But I think that we could close when our business is complete. And I believe that would be at the end of any questions and comments.
Just a refresher, if any one of our attendees would like to speak, just raise your hand and we'll promote you.
Also, I would say to anyone attending this meeting, I tend to be fairly approachable. So if you have any other questions out of the meeting, or if something comes to mind, feel free to reach out. I'm pretty easy to find.
Well, it would be my suggestion, if there is no public comment, we close this part of the meeting and take a 15-minute break and reconvene at 7 for the regular meeting, if that's okay with the board.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, John.
You bet.
Thank you, trustees. See you in a few.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you that we are recording and still live on YouTube.
Thank you, Nathan. Well, if everyone's ready, we can go ahead and get started. I'll give everyone a second to turn their video on. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It is December 14th at 7 p.m. And this is the Silverton Board of Trustees regular meeting. We just completed a USDA grant pre-application public hearing, and the town received significant support from trustees with respect to that, which is fantastic. And I echo that as well. Let us begin with a roll call.
Trustee Barella,
Here.
Trustee Harper,
Here.
Trustee Wager,
Here.
Trustee Bierma,
Here.
Trustee Lashley,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here. All right, Administrator Ryder, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Staff or trustees, any revisions to this evening's agenda?
None from staff, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. All right, at this time, we'll open up the meeting for public comment. Any member of the public who has joined the meeting can click the raise hand button if they would like to speak, and they'll be given 2 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move along to presentations and proclamations. Administrator Ryder, would you like to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you included in your board packet for the request of the board is the 2021 operating plan for the Kendall Mountain Rec Center for winter operations this year. And we thought best if you would like Director Bove to give a brief overview, or if you've already read it and just want to ask any questions you may have, Todd's standing by. This was prepared by Todd and staff and submitted to local PHO and was approved, and then ultimately to the state level and received approval from the state. So we are good to go at all levels under this kind of operating plan for Kendall. Now we're just waiting for Mother Nature.
So I can chime in here. Administrator Ryder and I discussed, we thought it might be better to format this as more of a Q&A rather than me just kind of read through the plan with the board. If the board would like me to briefly kind of provide a summary, I'd be happy to do so, but I feel it's pretty self-explanatory and would be happy to field any questions.
I would just say, we'll add one thing, Todd. Out of this process, actually some real positives have come about. We have a new ticketing reservation system, new abilities to purchase tickets online. We've come up, I should say, namely Todd has come up with a reservation system for rentals where we'll accept 4 people at a time in scheduled half-hour timeframes. This is something we may carry on to future years, just because typically you've got 30 people showing up at the last minute, kind of overwhelming rental staff and delays. So if this works out, this is something we may carry forward to future years. Certainly the reservation, ticketing, tracking, reporting system that also Nate Baxter had a great deal to do with, shored up our credit card processing. In the meantime, the season pass sale system is really strong, really robust, to the point where we may be carrying it even over to Moelis and possibly further. We've just had a kind of a disjointed multi-company credit card processing system that hasn't always been efficient or very helpful in the reporting side of things. So this year, we're really looking forward to gathering some really good skier data, who bought season passes, who bought day passes. Todd's got a great system of kind of judging week by week, even day by day, how many day passes we can open up. We're set up to sell day passes on site if necessary, although we're encouraging online purchases like most ski areas are now. And then I think the COVID restrictions are good and will work well. And it was a kudos to Todd and Lisa Branner and those who worked on, coming up with a flexible plan that hopefully here we're getting into some snow pattern and we can get open and see how it works.
Thank you, Administrator Ryder. I guess the only thing I would add is just a brief Kendall update. As you all know, we did receive some snow the last couple of days. I don't think it's quite enough to take our new snowcat out, unfortunately, but I think that hopefully we're in the pattern now and we're looking at some snow towards the end of the week. And I can assure everyone the moment we're ready to open, we will. Everything else is basically lined up. So we're waiting on snow at this point. And there's a couple of things we can do, like try and groom with the snowmobiles, stuff like that, to get a jump start on things. I think we're even a little, unfortunately, light for that after walking around over at Kendall today. But hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be in a different situation. What this snowfall was good for is the ice rink. This was like the perfect amount and the perfect type of snow. So we're expecting significant progress quickly on the ice rink now that we've kind of got some help from Mother Nature. And again, I'd be happy to field any questions about all things Kendall. But I'll give the floor back to Administrator Ryder and Mayor Furman.
Well, a couple other good pieces of news. I mean, we enter the season with a 1-year-old rental fleet that was hugely well received last year, and a pretty nice looking snowcat that we finalized the paperwork on. So we're good to go there. So that's, in a tough time frame, some neat things over at Kendall that we haven't had in a while.
Well, it doesn't look like we have, oh, there we go. Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's apparent through reading this report that you guys have put a lot of work into thinking this out and complying with all the regulations put forth by the state and making this happen. And then on top of that, finding extra efficiencies to actually make this a viable season. So, that's kudos to you guys and nice work. I think this is going to be excellent, and I'm excited to see the slopes with skiers on them. As far as the ice rink, that's good news. It's been an extremely warm fall, and now that we have some snow on the base and we can start to flood it, we can get out there and get some ice. So nice work.
Agreed. Yeah, we all know that a lot of work goes into the Kendall Mountain Rec area, and we appreciate that you guys do this. It's pretty unique for a municipality to manage a public park that has so many moving parts. Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you. I'd just like to add on top of that, a couple years ago when we had a really slow start to the ski season, we actually had the opportunity to have a good ice facility, and that was due to the town crew as well. And so, you know, even if the snow doesn't materialize, I think it's important that you got the ice rink on the horizon, and we can provide something for people to do over the holidays, even if the skiing's not so great.
Agreed. It hasn't stopped us from trying this year with the ice rink. Just when we have a little bit of snow, about what we have right now, the progress really ramps up. So I'm hoping very soon to have see more significant progress.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
This is really off topic, but since I'm here and my students keep asking and I've got the floor, I'm going to go for it. Is there any way that the beaver pond could ever be plowed?
We've discussed it this year. I think it might require a little more staff discussion, but that has been on our radar. And to my knowledge, it's been used quite frequently recently.
Yeah, I've been over there almost every day teaching PE, and also, yeah, on the weekends with my kids. We just weren't sure if the ice ever gets like strong enough to bring out the little sidewalk plow or something, like an actual machine, because we tried shoveling and it just took forever.
Yeah, and we've discussed some options like that. There have been equipment issues in the past with that, to my knowledge. But I'm always open to creative solutions. And at the board's direction, I think we could, as staff, try and solve that.
I'll pass it along to the non-voting members of our community.
Okay.
Trustee Lashley.
From what I've heard, a piece of equipment did go through the ice, which is why they stopped maintaining it. Well, at one point, but maybe there are certain thresholds, you know. I don't know. We could talk about it.
Yeah, it's generally 4 to 6 inches before you can put any kind of sizable piece of equipment, tractor or plow truck or something like that. So we even talked, I think, Todd, at some point, you know, if it stays really cold, boring it to see how thick it is. There's easy to find like internet data on how thick, you know, if what 2 inches will hold most people, 4 inches will start to hold equipment, 6 inches, you start to get pretty safe for anything. But as Todd said, yeah, he's thought about it, and it would be kind of a cool thing if we could get there.
Or maybe use a smaller piece of equipment.
I think the weakness comes with the inlet is that if you do try to go over there, it just doesn't seem to ever freeze very solid where the water flows in. So that's probably where the thinnest ice is. And I do remember hearing about that, Austin, years ago, piece of machinery falling in there.
It's not very deep, though, thankfully. I've gone out there to retrieve several Frisbees in the past, and it's not very deep.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to exploring it a little more. I just would like to have pretty stringent guidelines about what our ice depth would need to be and any signage and stuff like that, just to make sure if we were kind of sanctioning it as a ice rink, that we were doing so in a safe manner. Really just due diligence stuff.
Well, wonderful. Sounds like no questions to the proposed operations plan for KMRA with respect to COVID-19 and the adjustments that were needed. Thank you very, very much, Todd, and all staff that contributed.
Great job, Todd.
Thank you.
Trustee Barella, did you have a question before we move along? It looks like you have your hand up, but that may just be from before.
No, I'd like to say thank you to Todd, Lisa, John Ryder, everybody on the staff for doing this. I read it over, absolutely thrilled. Great job, team. That's the way to put things together and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to extend a quick thank you to Jim Donovan and Becky Joyce, who also were very instrumental in getting this approved and passing it along to the state. So thank you to both of them.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is public hearing for the Town Avalanche Hazard Development Permit use subject to review application, proposed Hart RV Park lots 15 to 17, block 16 near 13th and Animas Street in Silverton, Colorado. As a public hearing with the applicant present, who I see is here on the meeting as an attendee, and we will promote Doug Hart to panelist. Now, the way that this goes is Doug Hart will be given the opportunity to present. The public will be then given the opportunity to comment prior to any decision by the board. After the public and the applicant provide their comments, then the board can go through a Q&A with the applicant, and the public comment is closed for the record. Then we can, as a board, discuss and entertain any motions. So at this time, I will hand it over to, I guess, first, Lisa Adair, in case you'd like to preface anything else before we hand the floor to Doug Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a use subject to review application, which means that the town board can choose to approve this, deny it, table this application, or approve it with conditions. The Planning Commission reviewed this application. The Planning Commission and I both recommend approval with conditions that are listed in your staff report as written. The proposal is 2 RVs seasonally in the summer within the town's avalanche hazard overlay district, located close to 13th and Animas Street. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer those. The applicant is as well, and there may be some adjacent landowners that call in to comment. I would encourage you to think about, for the future, acceptable RV maximum density in the avalanche district. What kind of fencing or screening might be appropriate for RV parks in an avalanche area, and whether or not generators would be appropriate in a mostly residential zone.
Thank you very much. I know that this is an issue that's come up for the town quite a bit, thinking about how best to utilize the red zone, and this is the first time this board is considering an issue. So, Mr. Hart, thank you for pushing this issue to our attention and giving us the opportunity to consider how we can best utilize these zones. And with that, I will hand the mic over to you to present.
All right, well, thank you very much. Always nice to be a guinea pig. First, I'd like to just introduce myself. Doug Hart is my name. I first came to Silverton in 2003. I was brought here by the Hard Rock 100 Ultra Marathon, not as a runner, but as a volunteer. And I've been coming pretty much every year since. I currently serve on the board of the Hard Rock 100. I've been treasurer for 3 years, and I'm now the vice president of the board. So I won't call them roots in Silverton, but I've been coming for a while with a purpose. Now, I'm sure you've all read the application, and the application is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You know, this is the application, and you have to kind of read it and try and divine what is it he's really trying to do. What I'm really trying to do is have a vacation place on one of these lots in Silverton to come, mostly in July and perhaps a couple of weeks in September, and occasionally have someone come and visit me in another Airstream or similar type RV. That is really the sum of it. It's not a commercial enterprise. I totally accept all the conditions that the planning board suggested. I'm not going to rent a space out. There will not be a lot of traffic going in and out. It's really mostly me and my RV, and that's pretty much it. One of the conditions is some screening, temporary screening, and I'm happy to comply with that. The only place it really might make sense is on the side closest to the bridge over to Kendall Mountain ski area, if you can sort of get that, what I'm trying to say. And the property line between my property and the neighboring house is literally right up against their house. So were I to put screening on the property line, which I'm happy to do, it would be really close to their house. And my primary spot, and I don't know if all you can visualize this location, there's an old miner's cabin. And my primary location is on the other side of the miner's cabin. So the space that they sort of enjoy as being empty now will be empty most of the time. But again, I would be happy to, put screening up there if that were in fact the wisdom of this group. What else would I want to say here? That is really it. I guess I'd like to address the Taylors had some pretty strong concerns, and I don't know if you all have read them, but I've got them up on another screen here, and I'd just like to address them one at a time, because I would have some similar concerns if I were them. Starting at the last one, we strongly object to the creation of a commercial business operating a narrow one-way alley street in our residential section. I would object to that too, and that is not at all what I plan, as I said before. In terms of parking on the space, I actually spent 5 nights there in September, right after I closed on the property. And in fact, I can back onto the property without coming close to encroaching on anybody else's property. So that I understand their objection, but in fact, I don't encroach on anyone's property. I would also be concerned about blocking the alley. And as it states in the conditions, my truck would be far off the alley. So there would never be, they stay as many as 4 to 6 other vehicles. That simply isn't the case. It would be my vehicle. And if I ever had a guest, there'd be another vehicle. So it'd be a maximum of 2 vehicles. There was one other thing. Oh, and just in terms of the length of my tow vehicle, it's actually 19 feet, not 22 to 25 feet. So it really isn't as big. And if I could, I had this on before, but I think if I turn off, that is what it looks like. Only that's my old Airstream. The one I have now is actually a little shorter than that. So that's sort of what the package looks like as it's moving down the alley. So it'd be off the alley. There would be no congestion, no commercial enterprise of any kind. And I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you. At this time, we'll first have or give this over to the public, to anyone that would like to ask questions to Mr. Hart. And you would do that on Zoom by clicking raise hand at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none, we'll turn it to trustees. Any questions for Mr. Hart? Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see on here under one of the conditions that our planning director has proposed that you're going to have your water and sewer extensions to the lots. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Do you plan to have electric power extended to the lot as well?
I
do. A plug-in of an RV type cord?
I do not plan to do that unless it becomes necessary. When I was there last September, when the sun is pretty low, I did fine on solar power.
Because I do remember the Planning Commission strongly opposing the use of any generators within the town limits. And, I see that as a condition as well, but just want to confirm acknowledgement from you that only in the strictest emergency situation would you need to use a generator.
I completely accept that condition. And in fact, if it turns out I'm wrong, the solar doesn't work, and I think I'm right because I've done it, I would then run power to the site. My intent is to be a good neighbor, and I might add at this point that the 2 neighbors across the street, I think both support what I'm doing Malcolm McDougall and Rory Cowie.
It just seems like there's an opportunity here for a precedence to be established if a generator were so allowed for use in the residential district. And I think that's something that we all want to try to avoid to maintain some of the remaining quiet aspects of our community.
And I would completely concur.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Kind of on that subject, well, nice to meet you, Mr. Hart. Glad you're here. I think this seems like a really good idea for the use of the red zones, and I just support sort of conceptually thinking about our red zones like this. And Lisa, your information in the packet was so thorough and helpful. And I guess kind of along the lines of Trustee Wiegert, like, are there big considerations? You know, this particular situation sounds very reasonable and very neighborly and in line with being a good community member in Silverton. I'm just wondering if there are any precedents other than the generator, the screening, the density. Sounds like that was another issue. Just so that, because I'm inclined to be really supportive of this idea, but I also just want to make sure that if we were to apply the same thinking in a different location, that we don't set ourselves up for difficulties in the future. And then, sorry, my other one question was about a tap fee. Is this a situation where a tap fee gets applied?
Yes. Unless you would not like to apply it. No, I fully expect to pay a tap fee.
Okay, thanks.
A tap fee would be required, and taps or one tap for the 1 or 2 RVs. And as for a precedent, any development or use currently proposed in the avalanche hazard overlay districts can be reviewed or is reviewed by the town board. Now, when I initially looked this up, the avalanche regulations specify that the planner can administratively approve RVs on sites in the avalanche district, but it doesn't say how many. So because this was more than one, I wanted to bring this up. The town board could decide that you want me to administratively approve 1 per lot maximum or 1 per site maximum. And then these would not come to the town board. Or you could decide that you would like to see all of these on a case-by-case basis. So that would be one precedent type of issue to consider. Is I will continue to bring these to you unless you tell me otherwise. You could tell me that if someone is proposing less than 1 RV per lot, that you don't want to bother to have to review it. So that's up to you guys.
Thank you. I was also curious to hear a little bit more about the Planning Commission's discussion around not allowing 30-day or greater rentals, and thinking about that from a precedent perspective. It doesn't sound like Mr. Hart would be impacted much by allowing or disallowing long-term rentals, but this seems from a precedent perspective that it would limit the ability to utilize red zone for RVs as owner occupied. And if the intent is to increase housing in Silverton, that may be challenging for some. And so I'm just curious to hear more about that.
Mayor, I think in this particular case, the Planning Commission felt that this is largely a residential zone. So they were not in favor of any kind of rental or commercial use. If they were, or if you were okay with renting of Doug Hart's proposed guest RV spot, then you would want to limit that to 30-day rental, which is what a person with a normal house or duplex would be allowed to do there. Then that would cut down on turnover impacts to the neighbors. I think in some situations, allowing for a 30-day RV spot rental would be appropriate. And then in this particular situation, the Planning Commission was not in favor of that. It's basically up to the town board. In this particular situation, we have an applicant that has no interest in renting out a spot, but it would be very likely that the next applicant would want to propose a rental of spaces. This past summer, at one point, there were 4 proposed RV or tiny home parks, and those applications didn't get turned in yet. The only one that did get turned in is this one. So I think we will be seeing these type of projects again in a few months. So you may just want to spend some time on your own thinking about what you feel is appropriate and best for the community for RV parks in general.
Thank you. And for my own clarification, would a 30-day or greater rental be considered commercial use?
Mayor, I think that any time that someone is renting and charging a fee, that could be considered commercial.
Thank you. Trustee Lashley.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. Yeah, so first of all, to our applicant here, Douglas Hart, thank you so much for going through this process. I think that we pass an ordinance every summer that kind of allows people to at least temporarily use their property to stay in mobile trailers or RVs on their property, and this is the first time, to my knowledge, that this has ever come across the town board. In general, I'm supportive of Mr. Hart's application. I think for the use in an avalanche zone, I think that he is really trying to be a great neighbor, and I'm wholly in support of approving his application tonight. In general, for RV parks, I think that it's a concern that we have too many RV parks, but in general, I'm supportive of their use in avalanche districts. It's the non-avalanche districts that I am concerned about. It's something that we've talked about a lot, and I actually looked it up in the code not too long ago, and RV parks in the economic development district are not uses permitted by right, but uses subject to review. And to my knowledge, we've had a couple other of these RV parks that have gone through the process and not been approved as uses subject to review, but as uses administratively by previous planners. And that's something that I'm a little more concerned about. I think that administratively allowing one person per lot or one unit per lot could fall underneath our ordinance that we approve every summer for housing. And in general, I think it's a good idea to allow some kind of long-term rentals to employees who stay in their RVs when they come as summertime workforce housing. But in general, I think, causing too much density in some of these residential areas could be a problem. I think it's a great use of an avalanche area that isn't usable for permanent structures, though. And the other thing. So I know we're all really concerned about generators, but the RV park that's directly across 14th Street from my house has no such regulation or restriction for the use of generators. And I'm not sure that it would be fair of us to necessarily ask applicants, especially someone like Mr. Hart, who's come through the process, to not use a generator when we allow them basically on several other lots through town and in RV parks in town as well. So I think that's kind of a general thing that we need to think about potentially as an ordinance for some of these areas, because 24 hours a day, my neighbors run generators.
Mr. Hart, and then Trustee Birma.
Again, I'm happy not to use a generator, but also there are generators and there are generators. They're contractor generators, which are really loud, and then the little Honda inverter generators, which are actually incredibly quiet. Were I to have permission to use one and actually use one, it would be a little Honda generator that you wouldn't hear from 40 feet away. But again, I'm also content to accept the Planning Commission's condition.
Thank you. Trustee Birma.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. I would totally agree with your assessment of a square peg in a round hole. I think the application is really misleading, calling it an RV park for what you want to use it as. And I don't know if this is, I don't want to get bogged down in this at the moment, but maybe in the future having a discussion of, if this is going to be a reoccurring thing, maybe restructuring the application process that's a little more specific to one use over another, as to whether it's commercial and being used for rentals rather than personal owner occupied use. But as far as what you want to do right now on your lot, I would totally support that, especially in a red zone for a temporary structure like that.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
So back to Lisa's point about whether to hear all of these applications or not. Just hearing everyone's comments, and I could be really off base here, so feel free to course correct if I'm wrong. But I'm wondering if, I guess I'm leaning towards wanting to hear applications if they are beyond a certain already approved scope, like the ordinance that we talked about over the summer. And then just because then we'll have a better handle on sort of what's happening in town and what sort of supports and issues come up, and then be able to discuss those and incorporate them into future ordinances. Because this doesn't, I know it's come up before, but I'm wondering if it may come up increasingly and in what form. And so I'm leaning towards wanting to hear applications, at least for a certain amount of time.
Thank you. Trustee Barella.
Yes, I believe Mr. Hart has done his due diligence. He's been put through the ringer with all of the planning department and Lisa. He's completed the application. Everything that Trustee Lashley brought up was a lot of the concerns and so on that I have, because what stops with our temporary ordinance every year for the additional summer housing, what stops them from using a generator? Nothing. So I think Mr. Hart has done his work, and I believe that this is the correct way to do it and to bring it to us, even if it's a little, cumbersome. The process serves so that way your neighbors hear what you're saying. All the rest of the town is truly informed on what you're doing. It doesn't seem like it was just administratively just pushed through. So the public process that's going on now is really for the community at large too, to understand what's happening. Because after reading all the letters from the neighbors, I had a very different vision in comparison to what you're coming out and saying. So thank you, Mr. Hart. I am in support of this.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to call it to everyone's attention that your temporary summer RV camper regulations actually mention no generators or loud noises are allowed before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m.
Thank you.
And generators for RVs is probably something else we should look into, because I do understand those can be a noise impact, and that appears to be something that might be lacking in our codes.
Thank you. I have one more question, which is, even if something's not rented, do we have any ordinances in place for duration or frequency of RV visitors in residential zones? So hypothetically, if we were to permit, a visitor spot to be used but not rented, there still could be, and I'm not suggesting Mr. Hart would do this, but there could be someone coming in, every 3 days, and there could be a significant amount of traffic, which would be counter to the residential zoning. And I'm just curious if we have anything in place that covers that anywhere in town, not necessarily specific to this application.
I wish I could answer that, but I'm not exactly clear on what your question is.
Sure. So short-term rentals are well regulated because they're a commercial transaction. But how about, if someone just wants to have a friend visit and they show up in an RV, do we have any type of ordinance that covers the frequency with which that can happen? Because it seemed like it was the traffic that was the primary concern, both at the planning commission level with respect to the no 30-day or greater rental, as well as the neighbors' concerns. And again, it doesn't sound like Mr. Hart would be creating any type of issues with respect to this, but I'm just thinking through all the different precedents we may set here. And I'm curious if we cover that kind of transaction volume outside of a commercial setting where you just have visitors coming all the time and you have a very busy lot.
I would want to double check this with Bill McDougall, but I know that Bill and we get complaints about RVs from neighbors, and we have to go out and try to see how long that RV's been parked there, if it has exceeded the time limit and then the other item is your summertime employee housing RV ordinance requires that person, that camper, to turn in a pay stub or a letter from a business owner stating that that person is a seasonal employee. So as for just visiting RVs, the way that we find out about violations is generally when a neighbor calls to complain, or we notice that an RV has been parked too long. And other than that, I would have to ask Bill and Kelly Freeze about any kind of RV park lodging fees that I don't really know about those. Sales tax or lodging fees for RV parks.
Well, I think the question was, do we have any kind of regulation or ordinance for visiting RVs to stay and park? And we do. It is tough to enforce, Mayor, as Director Adair said. I want to say it's 7 days, but we will double check on that. But there is ordinance in place, to prevent just freelance long-term parking of RVs on public right-of-way and private lots.
I believe it's 14 days in town and then it's 21 in the county. And those time limits are generally set by concerns over septic, sanitary, health issues.
Got it. And that actually does the inverse of what I was thinking about, where it creates increased frequency for shorter duration, whereas we're trying to promote longer duration, lower frequency, it sounds like. Trustee Barella?
Yes, there is an ordinance, just as Lisa and John were saying. It's 14 days for anybody in the city. I don't have my code book in front of me, otherwise I would tell you. So, and it's basically just so your friends can show up, bring their RV, stay with you for a week or two, and then move on. So it's not like we're using it as short-term or the employee housing. And I think we've kind of gotten a little off subject with Mr. Hart here. And so this is all going back to what he's doing. Is he proposing that he's going to be doing this with friends? From what it sounds like, he's not. So I'd like to hear him respond whether or not he believes he's going to have a huge amount of frequency of people coming through every 14 days to utilize these spaces. Thank you.
I guess I would answer that by saying, for me, it's to have an occasional friend come and visit an RV. I don't expect to have a revolving door of people coming and going, and someone's got to leave tomorrow because another person's coming the next day, that sort of thing. It really is for very occasional use. And I am sensitive to the traffic impact on the neighborhood. And my plan for using the property is to minimize the impact of traffic.
Thank you. Any other trustee discussion? It sounds like we're generally in support. So in that case, I would like to clarify one thing, which is that I feel like this is a pretty restrictive set of conditions and that we consider each application on a case-by-case basis rather than kind of stamping all to include the same restrictions that were included here. But otherwise, I would entertain a motion from a trustee. Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that we conditionally approve this avalanche hazard development permit use subject to review application to allow 2 RVs on lots 15 through 17, block 16, near 13th and Animas Streets, with the proposed, how many conditions are there? 21 conditions put forth by the planning director.
Thank you, Trustee Wiegert. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Harper. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barella?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Wager?
Yes.
Trustee Bierma?
Yes.
Mayor, Trustee Lashley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Well, Mr. Hart, thank you very much for bearing with us through this process.
It's my pleasure, and thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you all next summer.
Likewise.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on our agenda is consideration to approve resolution 2020-13 adopting the 2021 budget. Administrator Ryder, over to you.
Okay, if I may take just a few minutes, just a couple quick minutes to identify the changes since the hearing on the 7th. Let me get over here. Most of it good news. We collected sales tax, got our collections in earlier today for sales tax. We were projecting 75,000 collections in December for the month of October. We hit 101. So we've adjusted not only the 2020 projection upward, but the 2020 projection, but the 2021 projection as well, or budget as well. That's a new change. I had to make sure that I had identified, we put in $5,000 for the town emergency protocols that we're going to be working with Jim Donovan. I had mentioned that I had it in, but I couldn't find it, so it's in there now. I guess this is the big one. I had a lengthy discussion with Administrator Tookie and a lengthy discussion with Director Adair, who shared with me in intimate detail and subsequent to Trustee Lashley's comments last week. I would very seriously like the board to consider putting a placeholder under Assistant Planning Director. We're still working out some issues. We intend to get Director Adair immediate help through Nathan, through reallocating his time. We're meeting Wednesday morning to start kicking him off. Kelly and I are giving up our time that Nathan was working on. We're good for now, and have her or have Nathan split his time between Lisa Branner and Lisa Adair. Lisa Adair is in dire need of administrative help. As we've talked, I have a call into DOLA and Patrick Rondinelli to see if those programs that we've talked about before are available. There's no doubt they're going to cost us something where we didn't have really a placeholder, and or another hire with a specific set of skills, primarily, you know, some planning, maybe some architectural. But we are in a spot now where Director Adair is just drinking water through not only the fire hose, but the hydrant. And the time is now to get her some immediate help and try to establish some kind of midterm, longer term strategy here. So I'd very much like you to consider that. We have ideas outside of, you know, some kind of a more permanent hire here, but we've got to get her through the next few months and clear the backlog while we continue to revise codes. You know, this discussion tonight on Mr. Hart's property is case in point. You know, is the process too complicated? Are conditions by code too much? You know, is there a way to streamline? Because right now, as we talked about today, Lisa and I, you know, the properties in town, the flat, easy ones are going away. And they're all on slopes or in avalanche zones or have wetland potential impact. We have an overwhelming number of applicants coming in that have zero to little experience, you know, building and going through a planning process. In Silverton, we do not have an independent engineer since we hired the only one in town as our planning director. So I'd like you to strongly consider, it fits in the budget, it's not gonna hurt, and it will get her at least some immediate, much needed help. I will be spending myself, you know, personally, significant more time. I'm clearing my decks so that I can work more closely with Lisa on a day-to-day basis to help her prioritize, to really learn where the code issues are, so that, you know, as the code committee and ultimately the board are, you know, we're going through virtually every one. We've barely made it through 2 so far. And what's next? Well, avalanche zone was on there, but there's statutes regarding the time she has ordinance-wise to review these things, or they risk automatic approval. So we may want to jump on that one and say, we need to lengthen the time frame here. We need to find out where applicants are just forcing and pressing too much outside the lane work from Director Adair. You know, they don't have a local engineer to turn to, a local planning expert to turn to that they can hire independently. So I suspect that they turn to the low-hanging fruit and use Lisa's experience, which then creates additional workload at times. So anyway, that's the story there. I don't think the county's going to share it with us. Lisa made it very plain and clear to me that as of right now, this is more of a town-generated issue, not a county-generated issue. The projects, the complicated ones, the applications are all coming through town with minimal activity in the county. That could change. We need to, you know, pay attention. Administrator Tookie's fine with the 50-50 split without this 24,000. He's not interested in, you know, adjusting 70-30 town county for the main planning department. So, and we understand that it can shift, you know, from year to year, sometimes from month to month, where the flow of applications are coming either through the county or the town. Right now, it's town heavy. So that is my pitch. And I think it would do a big step and a great deal of help for Lisa. Contract services, there is a small adjustment to the sheriff's budget.
Administrator Ryder, if I could put you on pause for just 1 second. I saw Trustee
Certainly.
Lashley and Trustee Uyghur raise their hands.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Austin, you can go first.
Okay. Thanks, Trustee Uyghur. Thank you, Mr. Ryder, so much for, I know this isn't an easy ask, but I think that this will pay dividends for us greatly as the town to be able to have a planning department that can catch up. I think this is an issue that long precedes probably most of us who have been on this board. And I really hope that we can kind of get caught up with some of this backlog and give Planner Adair the help and the resources that she needs to be able to most effectively do her job.
Thank you, Trustee Lashley. Trustee Uyghur?
I feel like, we've wanted to get this help for Lisa for months now, and I want to thank Austin for making such an awesome speech at our last meeting. I thought that was really poignant, and Mr. Ryder, thank you for finding it in here. I also wanted to mention that this was a major concern of members of the planning committee as well. They have noticed that there's the amount of workload that Lisa Adair is taking on is astronomical, and then they also expressed concerns about not having enough money in the budget for her for next year. So I'm in total support of this. I think this is great, and I hope other members of the board feel so as well.
Thank you, Trustee Uyghur. And sorry for the interruption, Administrator Ryder.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, both trustees. I think that's it as far as the changes, law enforcement we talked about. I think that's it. This was a non-impact that Jackie Kerwin asked me just to show in a kind of a grossed up fashion. She gets a $7,000 grant that pays for internet, or a big portion of it. So we just added, instead of netting it out of internet, we show it as the grant revenue and then the internet total costs. So that 7,000 is paying for the bulk of this $8,800 in internet. And that was it. So what does it mean? This is the budget with these slight modifications that I would like you to consider for approval. Nothing really changed here. There was an increase, slight increase to the deficit from 20,000 or 22,000 to 43, primarily the ad for the planning help, and offset by an increase in the sales tax revenues. So overall, not big changes, but as we've discussed, maybe some really meaningful help, or start of meaningful help for the planning department. So in summary, this is the one I would like you to consider for approval. The budget appropriation 2020-15 will change slightly because the revenues and expenses in that appropriation will be changed to these two numbers in revenues expense. The rest stay the same. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll send to you along your way for these resolutions to be considered.
Thank you very much. And so would we be adopting the resolution 2020-13, adopting 2021 budget as updated, as opposed to what was included in the packet?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Bierma.
I've just got one minor correction. My last name's spelled wrong on page 50 of the packet on the budget document. Just need to remove the N at the end.
Oh, geez. Thank you for that. We will make that correction.
Beerman sounds pretty good too. All right, trustees, do I hear a motion to approve resolution 2020-13 adopting the 2021 budget as updated?
So
Trustee
moved.
Lashley?
So moved.
Sorry.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you, Trustee Barella, and thank you, Trustee Lashley. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
Trustee Beerma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. And a big thank you to Administrator Ryder. This was a really educational process for the board to go through with you, and we appreciate all of your hard work.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Consideration to approve resolution 2020-14 mill levy.
And this is what you will approve to set 10.56 as our town mill levy on real estate. It did not change from last year and has been the same. This will provide us adequate real estate taxes to support general fund expenditures. Upon approval, this is what will get turned into the county tomorrow.
Administrator Ryder, may I ask you to end the screen share so that we can see everybody a little more easily?
You bet.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on resolution 2020-14? Trustee Lashley?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-14, the mill levy.
Thank you, Trustee Lashley. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Trustee Barella.
Second.
Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
Trustee Beerma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. All right, consideration to approve resolution 2020-15, 2021 budget appropriation as updated, as administrator described previously in connection with the adjustments to the 2021 budget. Any discussion? Trustee Lashley, want to take three?
Sure, why not? I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2020-15, 2021 budget appropriation
As updated.
Second.
as updated.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Lashley. Thank you, Trustee Barella. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
Trustee Beerma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. Consideration to approve resolution 2020-16 appropriating lodging and camping fees.
I'll make
Administrator
a
Ryder,
motion.
or
Oh.
let me just ask, is this, Administrator Ryder, is this different in any way than whatever was put in place when lodging fees were first put in place?
It is not. It's the same, but this is setting forth any lodging fees and camping fees are put into a specific revenue account to be utilized for the expenditure centers listed in this in part 2, at the bottom of part 2, visitor center, parks and rec, building grounds, and community relations.
And is it safe to assume that you support the direction of these fees to those 3 specific things or 4 specific
And
things?
I would even suggest that we have room in the budget, many times, and we have put in, certain allowances for expenditures. So, I know we've talked in the past about assigning this to maybe more specific projects. And I think we have the flexibility to do that through further discussion as we enter the budget year, we can earmark that money within those cost centers for something more specific that the board wanted to support.
Great. Thank you. Any trustee discussion? All right. Trustee Lashley.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-16 appropriating lodging and camping fees.
Thank you.
I'll
Do I hear a
second.
second? Thank you, Trustee Wiegert. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella, Trustee Barella,
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Beamer,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is consideration to approve the town and San Juan County shared services agreement. Noting that a red line was sent around showing a revision that allows either the town or the county to approve or deny increases greater than 5% in the budget by the town or the county respectively to the other, whereas in the past it was simply a notice with no discretion to approve or deny.
I think this is a good clause that was added, and the county agrees as well. I've spoken and forwarded these changes to Administrator Tukey, and he still has to get commissioner approval, but thinks this will be wholly supported.
Trustee Lashley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, on this one, the town attorney, Mr. Kosnick, has asked me to recuse myself, being present on the other side of it. So it will be up to somebody else to make the motion on this one, and I will be recusing myself.
Thank you, Trustee Lashley. Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 2021 Town of Silverton and San Juan County Governmental Shared Services Agreement.
As amended.
As amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Borelli. I think you were just ahead of Trustee Harper on that one. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Beerma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Recuse?
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. Consideration to approve San Juan County Sheriff Department contract. This one also had a red line that was sent around with a revision. Administrator Ryder, can you quickly recap that revision, please?
Yeah, that is also, it's in paragraph 3M on the second page. Same principle here, although a little more languages because it's a two-way street here. It gives both the town and the county the ability to approve or disapprove anything that would increase our contribution over 5% or their contribution, and that we would consider that expense or reconciliation in the following budget year 2022. So it won't impact our shared services agreement for this year, but if there was something that went over 5% and we both agreed, then it would be considered in the 2022 budget to adjust. But it gives both sides a stopping point to consider something that's going over budget by more than 5%.
Thank you. And Trustee Lashley, is this one a recusal as well?
I think it's just better safe than sorry. So just since this is another shared service agreement between the town and county, I'll be recusing as well.
Great. Trustee Wiegert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 2021 Town of Silverton and San Juan County law enforcement contract as amended.
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you, Trustee Barella. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Recuse?
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. All right, consideration to approve the 401A retirement participation agreement. Administrator Ryder, anything to note here?
No, other than that the two H&I are similar. 401A is for town contributions to qualified employee retirement plan. The 457B is set up so the employees themselves can contribute amounts at their discretion. The contracts were old. Mostly they were brought forward as is with just different language from our CRA, the Colorado Retirement Association, who administers these plans for us. But we did open up a couple of options for the employees. One, probably the most significant, was allowing them to make a Roth contribution to the 457B, which is a after-tax initial contribution, but at retirement or when they are qualified to take money out of the retirement plan, they do not pay taxes at that time. So it is an option that some people like to use, and we've opened that up to them. But other than that, no significant changes other than just updating the contracts to be current with CRA. And Kelly and I spent time with our representative from CRA going over these two agreements.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say this is an overall benefit to the employees of the town of Silverton. And so with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 401A retirement participation agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Wiegert and Trustee Lashley. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper, Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Harper, your screen is frozen in a very contemplative about this. It looks like it just unfroze. There we go. All right. Thank you all. Consideration to approve the 457B retirement participation agreement, which Administrator Ryder also just described. Trustee Lashley.
I'll make a motion to approve the 457B retirement participation agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Barney. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. The next item is consideration to approve the Mullis Lake Clear Mountain Snow plowing contract, noting that this agreement also had a red line since the packet was distributed, and it looks like those changes relate to saying that the contractor shall plow the snow in the parking area after a reasonable time from the accumulation of 6 inches, as well as the contractor being liable for any damages to the parking lot or property owned or leased by the town and caused by the contractor.
And I will add that this contract was cleaned up by review of Attorney Kosnick and myself. There were some indemnities that had been given in prior contracts that we can't give, and those were all in your original copy. And then it was suggested that we just, put a little something in there that we're not waiting for days to get the thing plowed after a snowstorm. And then also, if they happen, there's not much to hit down there, but you never know. And so this just gives us a little more teeth in case something would get damaged as far as town property. I've talked to Jim Loki. He's in full agreement. Jim's been doing this for many years, does a great job for us. He's also been incredibly helpful in servicing and getting our new snowcat up to speed. So anyway, he's in full agreement with all of these changes as you consider approval.
Thank you. Any discussion? Trustee Lashley.
Oh man. Oh, I lost my place. So I'll wing it here though. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement for snow removal at Mullis Lake by Clear Mountain Snow Plowing.
As amended.
So noted.
Do we have a second?
I'll
Trustee
second
Weaver.
as amended.
Thank you very much. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. Next item and last new business item on the agenda tonight is consideration to approve the 4th of July Association Agreement as revised, which, similar to the other agreements tonight, had further revisions since the revisions proposed. Administrator Ryder, would you be able to just quickly recap the red line?
Yeah, the original contract had it at the association's discretion to cancel the event prior to April 30th for COVID-related concerns. It has been suggested that that be a town decision and move to May 15th as the kind of drop dead date, and also to suggest, it was suggested by the association that we consult, or that as this decision is made, the state of Colorado's health dial, whatever state it is in for San Juan County at that time, be consulted and considered. It's pretty natural that we would be talking to a lot of people, both town and association, as we get closer to the state and analyzing what the state of COVID is at that time and whether or not this event or partial events could go forward. There's a provision in here now that we both sides acknowledge that it's possible that partial events could be held, in parts not, and so that we would work collaboratively together to see what could be held and what couldn't be, depending on the state of affairs at that time.
Thank you. Trustee Barilla.
Yeah, no, I disagree with the wording of the revision. If it said town administrator and collaboratively with the association could cancel as a collective, but I am not in favor of it just saying the town, because there could be work and other items that we had already put forth and done based on the fact that we were like in, I don't know, a green zone or something. And then the town could turn around and decide that they didn't want the event to happen after all. So I'm not in favor of the new wording. I am in favor of the change that I proposed, saying the town administrator and the association.
Trustee Lashley?
Yeah, I guess I don't mind there being a revision either way to say whose responsibility it is to cancel the event. I know that a lot of times the sheriff acting as the fire marshal kind of has authority to say cancellation for the fireworks portion of the 4th of July. So I don't know that it's necessarily correctly reflected even in saying the administrator is responsible for canceling, but in that case on a May 15th date, that's I guess up to the discretion of the board. I'm fine with it either way. I think that Administrator Ryder and the town has been very supportive of the 4th of July Association. I don't think that there would be any malevolence or ill content as a reason for canceling the 4th of July. I think it would just be to do with unforeseen circumstances like major drought or pandemic. I'm not sure that May 15th is, I think for the majority of things that we're talking about here related to the pandemic, maybe May 15th is a good day to decide on those things, but I think deciding later as far as the fireworks are concerned, it always is really tight with June being a really dry month. So I don't know if we need to word that a little bit differently as well, but.
I just wanted to ask for some clarification. I'm actually reading this provision a little bit differently than we were just talking about it. I'm not reading the provision as giving the town discretion to cancel the event. I was reading this provision a lot more narrowly, where it just says that the town can terminate this agreement prior to May 15th if it deems the event to be, if it can't be safely held specifically with respect to COVID. And not for other reasons. Otherwise, everything's still pretty much in the hands of the committee. And so, again, it doesn't sound like it's canceling the event. It's about terminating this agreement, which has to do with the contributions that the town would make and other things like that. And it's only related to COVID. Is my reading correct, or am I misunderstanding?
No, I think you're correct. This one deals specifically with the state of COVID at the time, a decision would be made. And I think, if this in effect then canceled contributions, I think you probably have to consider that it would be difficult to hold the entire event, as I think Trustee Lashley pointed out last meeting. So while not specifically terminating, the event, it's terminating the agreement, but it would also terminate the contribution. That would probably make it fiscally difficult.
Got it. Trustee Varela, does that manage your concern at all that this is more to do with determination about the event being safe with respect to COVID and not a general determination around canceling the event for other reasons?
No, because this is a 2-year contract. So if it's giving the town the power to cancel the contract, you're canceling both years rather than just one. So that's why I mean, come on, you put the wording in there. I received the changes. So if it was your intent, Mr. Mayor, to word it that way, then why wasn't it worded that way? Rather than saying the contract could be canceled by the town, because yes, it's COVID related, but you're talking about a 2-year contract. So you're saying with this, because of COVID, they're canceling the contract, period. You're not saying you're canceling it for 2021 due to COVID relations. So some of the wording was just, in my opinion, improper, because you're taking the whole event from 1 year, and it's going in an umbrella over both.
Thank you. Trustee Varela, to clarify a misunderstanding, I did not draft any of this language. I made a suggestion that the town, rather than the committee, be able to terminate the contract if we were advised that the COVID pandemic would make the event unsafe, but this was not my wording at all.
And so the board, this was Attorney Kosnick, his suggested language via the mayor's propose his suggestions. I mean, I think
Trustee
the practical.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I think this is kind of just a clarification here. I'm reading here very specifically. The town may terminate this agreement prior to May 15th, 2021, if it deems in its sole discretion that the events contemplated hereunder cannot safely be held because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, so it only refers to the year upcoming for 2021, and it specifically outlines that this is because of COVID-19, and that's the only reason.
And I think the practical.
See, and I'm reading that differently.
I
actually agree with Trustee Barella's reading that if we terminated it, it would apply to both years. We need to further clarify that if we were just trying to terminate the contract with respect to a year. And sorry to interrupt, Administrator Ryder, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was trying to frame, the practical situation we might be in that would kick this clause in, is that the town and perhaps public health is strongly advising against holding the event or parcel of the events, and the association wholly disagrees and says, we think we can do it safely. That's where you might have a practical disagreement that would need to be considered. The other parts are under 13, fire, dryness, weather, anything, that's a separate part here, dealt with separately, mostly through the fire marshal, because it's too dry, or, if it's pouring rain, we don't have fireworks. So this is specific to COVID. I just want to introduce, the kind of the practical situation that could come in that might call this provision into action.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
I had the same kind of line of thinking as Administrator Ryder on this one, and it made me wonder if we defer to the fire marshal for the firework decision. Is it appropriate to have the San Juan County Public Health or a COVID related organization? It may be a statewide thing. It's hard to know at that point what this looks like, but that it really wouldn't be a town. I mean, in all actuality, the town is not making assessments on the COVID situation. That is information the town receives from public health. So I wondered if it was really the person who's making the entity that's making the decision is not the town anyway.
I'd like to address that. During our meeting, that is exactly what our PIO, Deanne Gallegos, who is also on the board, suggested, because we're going to follow CED or CEHP, I can't think of the acronym, guidelines. So that's what our suggestion was, which would of course be then, it doesn't have to be the sole description of the association, it could be in conjunction with, but by just naming the town as the sole person to cancel everything, I just feel that that's very wrong, because the previous agreement doesn't say that. It said the association. So if we put in all aspects, because we're going to be following exactly what the state guidelines are. It's not like we're going to try to get a variance, because a variance, according to Deanne Gallegos, was anything over 500 people. So you've got to think collectively how many people would show up. So there's no way anything would proceed forward based on that information. You can't even get a variance past 500 people if you're in some of these different, I can't remember the categories, but she laid it all out. So that is what our board's decision was to follow whatever the county regulations were based on the dial because of the state CDHP regulations. So if we want to just change that little sentence to say that it only will terminate financial responsibility of the town of Silverton for the 2021 year and not cancel the contract, which is a 2-year contract, I'm okay with that. And if we want to put in the town, the association, and public health, I'm okay with that. But we don't want to make it the sole discretion of anyone to call it before, and we don't want to cancel a 2-year contract based on poor wording. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm mostly in agreement with Trustee Barella. I think that we agree in substance, and it's just a question of getting the wording right in the agreement. Similar to how Administrator Ryder framed it and Mayor Pro Tem Barney supported. My concern again would be that the association, for whatever reason, was going ahead and the town felt uncomfortable because of advice that was given. But it sounds like if we can defer to the public health department with respect to making the COVID determination, everybody would be comfortable. Is that accurate, Trustee Barella?
No, I would like to see it a three-way conversation. The public health, the town of Silverton, and the association. So one group doesn't have all the power, because what if one portion or one section, whatever the collective group feels, could go off. So I think it should be a decision based on all three.
Right, but if public health advocates for or against, and let's say hypothetically they advocate for, but the association still doesn't feel comfortable with it, wouldn't the association still be able to provide an indication that they don't want to move forward? And similarly, if the town felt uncomfortable with it, couldn't the town? And I think in all likelihood, the town and association are likely to follow the guidance of public health.
Well, then that's why I'm saying if it's a collective decision of all three, then it's a collective decision of all three. And you're not putting one party over the next. So you're not giving anybody additional power. You're actually saying, let's come to the table, let's talk about it. Here's our deadline for the date. And if one section of the events of the day feel like that they could go off without a hitch, then we can move forward in a conversation about how to control that event or environment. So I think it should be all three, but it shouldn't be just solely one, because if the dial says that we're in red, then nothing's going to happen anyway, because that's what the CDEHP guidelines say to begin with. So that's why we wanted it in the contract, saying that we're going to follow what the state recommends based on our dial.
Thank you. There were a bunch of hands. I think Trustee Lashley's been up a couple times, and then Mayor Pro Tem Barney, and I think I saw Trustee Harper's hand as well. So Trustee Lashley.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely going to be a discussion between these three entities, but kind of similarly to how we've said in the past, that we really want to make a decision like this based on public safety and not on a political decision. And I think that by saying that this is something that the Board of Health or the Department of Health can have the final say, that's kind of in case there is a disagreement by any people that we are following state guidelines. I think that's really what this comes down to, is that we just make sure that we are abiding by the state public health laws.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
I agree with Trustee Lashley, and I think Trustee Barella agrees too, but the only difference is that the agreement, if all three organizations are equal, like the only thing I would say is that the public safety and public health really isn't equal to the other organizations in this situation. If they say it's red, I think the situation is that it's red. So they would have sort of a stronger voice in that conversation, but I don't know that we're saying anything different at this point, but I'm just noting that their voice doesn't seem to be as equal as the town or the associations. Maybe equal is not the right word, but their information influences the conversation in a different way.
Thank you. Trustee Harper.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. If I'm interpreting what Trustee Barella is saying on behalf of the 4th of July Committee, it's that each party has an equal voice at the table. Am I understanding that correctly, Trustee Barella?
Well, the state guideline is the voice, period. So we're going to be
as far as the
following
wording in the
whatever
contract,
that says. Well, now I have to bring back up the revised edition again. go ahead and finish your thought while I
This is-
bring the second one up again. I've got it on a different page.
Well, I kind of agree with Trustee Harper that, and
I'm just,
Mayor Pro Tem, that, look, if we're in red and the state says, no
red is
events,
red.
I mean, we're not having any events, or if we force the issue, we're all going to be in big trouble. I mean, they're throwing restaurateurs in jail and fining them $5,000 a day for not, so they're getting pretty serious about enforcement. So I don't know. There's another thing that, the events, any event can only be held if proper mitigation with then current COVID restrictions is followed and approved by every event we do has to go through Jim and Becky for their review and approval. And in some cases, like the ski area, it had to go up to the state for final approval before, we could move on with operation, for instance, at Kendall. And, something this big is going to follow that protocol as well.
And just for context, this all started from the request to include a go, no-go date of notice from the association, which is indicated in here as a May 15th date, but now it's very different than the go, no-go notice date. So I guess to split up the two issues and hopefully bring this thing to a close, can this be revised to include that the association will provide a go or no-go determination by May 15th, and also include that will include guidance for or against hosting the event from public health? And then I think we're good. And then there doesn't necessarily need to be any language around terminating the contract. It's just following the proper procedure.
And you're saying it's.
I agree with that.
What was that, Trustee Harper? Okay. Yeah, I think that this paragraph ended up looking a little different than was intended by the request in the last conversation.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, Mayor, because it was very different than what was shown initially. And it's the intent of everybody, just like what this Kendall did for the ski package. If there's a way to do something that'll include smaller things, then of course we're going to have the conversation with public health and figure out what we could do to still create the festivities for the day. But if the dial is whatever, then that's what you've got to follow. We're no different than anything else. So to try to put all this extra wording in there when it should just basically say that we're going to follow whatever the state guidelines are, and by May 15th will be the determination of whether or not we will move forward, was the whole intent of the association, based on the recommendations of our PIO, giving us exactly the parameters that are laid out right now through the state guidelines. So the no-go date is May 15th. We moved it ahead a little bit than the end of April, based on a discussion of all the board members, because of certain pieces of information that have to fall into line. And the rest of the items are already in there about calling things based on, drought conditions and so on, because you can't control the weather. So the whole point with this was just to make a simple revision to say for COVID, not to say that we're canceling the contract. So some of this wording really got out of control, and we had a very simple stated purpose that just got lost in translation here because of too many revisions or too many, cooks in the kitchen with it. So yes, if we can narrow it down, I'm very happy with that, because we're not going to violate any sort of state guideline, period.
Thank you. And so process-wise, does it make sense to table this so that it can be revised, put in front of the committee again, and then agreed to? Or Trustee Barella, are you comfortable enough letting us approve it now, assuming that the committee is going to be comfortable with those, pulling it back a bit and just clarifying that there's a go, no-go date and that we're going to follow public health guidelines similar to the fire department indicating whether it's safe or not to light fireworks?
Well, and Mr. Ryder was on our committee meeting. Unfortunately, Todd Bove couldn't make it, and he heard that that was our discussion. So the committee is fine with it, but the paragraph got diluted too much. Let's just put it that way. If we can just bring it back around, I don't think we need to table it, as long as we all agree that that it will be called by all three of us. If we have a conversation and it's May 12th and we are in the green zone and we are going to say, okay, how do we move forward with the health department with Becky and Jim? If we're in the orange zone, it's not going to happen. If we're, so the state has already set the parameters. So let's just word it so that it says, once again, like the previous document did, that we're going to follow the parameters of the state guidelines and that all three of us can have a conversation, because we don't know what the future holds. But it does not need to say we can terminate this contract. That wording needs to be gone. I mean, we've all said it. Everybody's on the same page here. Let's just get the wording right. So I don't think we need to table it. We just need to, I don't know, how would you want to phrase it, John?
Well, I think I've got all the points here. The question is it just town and association will collaborate in the decision to terminate events due to COVID-related issues, and then leave some of the other stuff in here that will consult the health dial and local public health office and so forth? Or are we leaving it to the association or just the town? My preference would be the town and association collaboratively work together to make the right decision based on the then current status of COVID and its related impacts.
Trustee Weger.
Thank you. I have a question. We're all acting like, and don't get me wrong, I think the 4th of July committee has done great work in the past, and I think that they do great things on the 4th of July. But if I remember correctly, and please, Miss Trustee Harper or Trustee Barella, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 4th of July committee was established in order to give the visitors that were visiting for the 4th of July something to do. It was a response to the shenanigans that had happened on the Hill the year before with underage drinking and alcohol consumption. And it's never, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's never been the intention of the 4th of July committee to attract more visitors. We know that we're already completely inundated on the 4th of July. So my question is, even if we do decide that we can't have the 4th of July celebrations, how are we going to stop people from coming? People are still going to come here unless they're in a lockdown.
Well, we've been to this rodeo last year, and it seemed like it was almost 4th of July every other weekend. And that's where all the protocols and mask buying and education and came into play, and that's how we dealt with it. And tried to keep people using best practices and following protocols as best we could, and quite frankly, did a pretty good job of it.
I think we did do a good job, and all I'm saying is that I think they're going to come no matter what. Whether we decide to cancel the 4th of July or we allow it to go on, I still think people are going to come here to vacation on the holiday. They're going to come here to camp. They're going to come here to get out and explore the wilderness. They're going to come no matter what.
You're 100% correct, Jess. So it's whether or not the festivities go on that are planned to be, yes, it is 100% planned to control crowds, to reduce the amount of people coming. We have successfully done that. The hillside is completely empty now. We've set up, everything that the entire town wanted as a collective voice, we have carried through everything that they have asked. So yeah, and the whole idea was to attract less visitors, and we obviously have. We have reduced the amount considerably. So this year going into it, we're going to be on a Sunday, so people will be showing up regardless. It has nothing to do with whether or not we're having a parade that day. Now, a lot of people voice their opinions and are very sad because this is, a celebration of our nation and the freedoms that we all enjoy. So there were a lot of people who get upset. We had a lot of hate mail when we canceled it this year. And so it's okay though. It's okay to get the hate mail and say, well, we did it for the sake of the community because that's what public health said. This is how we have to proceed forward because this is the new normal that we're living in. So yes, people will still come, but the festivities themselves, what if we could have just a parade and that's it that day? You know, we don't know. So we don't want to rule out the possibility of having a little bit of something if we can, but we might have to cancel everything just like we did this year based on the COVID restrictions.
Thank you. Trustee Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
As far as the language for the contract goes, it sounds like administrator writer's revision, and then Mayor Furman suggested like with the guidance from, and then it seems like we're there.
Agreed.
So I guess, and I still have the question, is this a town ultimate decision, an association ultimate decision based on public health input and all that, or is it an and or?
So I think this whole issue started because we started as the go, no go indication. And then the way that this paragraph was originally drafted in the packet, it became a right of termination. And then I think this modification that we're talking about, or that we were talking about at the beginning of tonight, was a reaction to that termination right by the association. And we should just wipe that whole slate clean, go back to the original intent from the discussion, which was the association will provide the town with notice on or before May 15th of go, no go. And with respect to COVID specifically, we'll follow the state protocols and the guidance from public health department. There doesn't need to, I think, be any phrase in here relating to the termination of the contract, particularly because it's a 2-year contract, as Trustee Barella pointed out.
Got it.
So are we good to approve this draft agreement with that description of what the changes are, or do we need to see the revisions and have the 4th of July committee also review and approve the revisions before we approve this agreement? I would defer to Trustee Barella on that, or Administrator Ryder.
And I guess just as one, if PH, local public health, or the state says, you know, recommends that we don't do it, is that decision going to carry the ultimate weight here? Like they just say, we recommend you don't do it. We can't tell you not to.
Well, I think that is the right decision. That's what we discussed in our committee meeting, because we didn't want to have any sort of violation of, you know, the COVID restrictions. So of course, we're going to follow exactly what the state guidelines say.
It sounds like we should see a revised draft, just because it sounds, Administrator Ryder, if you were like, okay, I got it done, then I think we could approve it with revisions. But why don't we just get the language in place? Trustee Barella, does pushing this off 2 more weeks put the committee in a bad position, or is that okay?
No, we are fine with that. But I didn't think we were having, are we having our meeting on the 28th?
No. Well, you guys can.
Okay.
We normally don't, I should say.
So,
it's up to you as trustees.
Yeah, I would push it off till the 11th of January. I'm okay with that. Paul would have to, or John would have to revise the date structure on the contract.
We will.
Because
I was just going to say, and I'm also okay expressing my support, and I would ask the other board members to give an indication as well, so that the committee has confidence they can continue moving forward with planning. So that, you know, you're not, this pushing back isn't because we're trying to block or delay or anything like that. It's just a question of getting this administratively correct. Everybody good? Okay, so we will table this one until our next meeting, just to clarify that language. Moving along to approval of the consent agenda items. Anything that needed to be pulled out or questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem?
I had a couple little things. One is, or this was a big amount, and I'm assuming it's just like a once a year thing. The Caterpillar rental for $90,000. Is that something I already knew about?
That is for the 3 pieces we lease purchased last year. They're on staggered terms, 4, 5, and 6 years. But yeah, that's the annual payment for the 2 loaders and the grader.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. On a smaller note, I was just curious about the week for $259.
Say it
I'd
again.
say
Subscription, maybe?
Subscription for the library.
Oh, cool. Okay. And what is Gensco?
Gensco is the Fulmers, who are the Mullis Lake Campground operators.
Oh.
And in their contract, if they hit certain revenue, there's a schedule for revenue targets hit, and they blew the doors off, or they did. So that is their bonus. That is part of their contract and was budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Wiegert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion. We approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Lashley. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes, yes.
Trustee Weigert?
Yes.
Trustee Bierma?
Yes.
Trustee Lashley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving along to staff reports. Administrator Ryder, anything you would like to highlight?
Thank you. Not very much. I think you can see by most of them, we're gearing up for a busy year already before the new year's even started. The big issues we've talked about, the USDA grant submittal. John Seitz and I have been working feverishly to try to close out the change order on the water tank project. Unfortunately, the contractor is kind of doing what contractors sometimes do. We seem to have productive discussions, and then we have some selective memory. But we are holding firm to our conviction of what is fair. Have continually asked them for documents and backup and explanation that they can't seem to provide. So we hold out. There's a earmark in the projection for 2020 that we think will be adequate to cover the final fair negotiation. Kendall, we talked about, and I don't have anything else specific to bring up. Todd, yeah, talked about the ice rink. No, that's it. I just entertain any questions specifically you may have.
Thank you very much. Trustees, any questions or comments on staff reports? Trustee Wiegert?
I would just like to really acknowledge here towards the end of the year all of the difficult circumstances and the extreme determination and hard work the staff has put forward this year to manage these unique situations that we've had to face. I really want to thank all the staff and Mr. Ryder for everything that they do for the town and the citizens. And I hope you guys have a relaxing and enjoyable holiday. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you, Trustee Wiegert, and I would like to return the thank you to this board and all of its support during tough times. And coming into this, 4 of you, and well, all of us really, to the unprecedented pandemic, but we as staff thank you as well for your continued support throughout some difficult but ultimately rewarding, and I couldn't be more proud of where Silverton has wound up at the end of this year. So thank you.
All right, thank you all very much for that. Committee reports. Have we had any committee meetings since the last trustee meeting? I'm not aware of any outside of Planning Commission, and I think we got a pretty good update already. Any other updates for Planning Commission? Trustee Wiegert?
Well, I was actually going to save that for the trustee report, but actually, just as Administrator Ryder had said earlier, our planning director is inundated with works in the town. Typically, for these planning commission meetings, we see 2 or 3 applications in the county, and then maybe 1 application in the town. The last meeting was quite the opposite. We had 3 applications to go over in the town, and we already talked about the Hart RV park. That was in a month ago, but there was quite a bit of talk about the Kind Castle application for a marijuana dispensary across from the old Miners Tavern, Miners Union building, and we denied that, and they're going to bring back something that looks a little bit more professional and something that looks more like it will fit in our community than what they had proposed. I think everybody on the planning commission was pretty disappointed with how that one was presented. We also had the Merrill Heimbaugh proposed town lot re-subdivision, and that's so that we can continue with our wetlands mitigation work out there, and so that the Merrills can reclaim the dead fin that we all know way too well. And so we had interesting discussions on that, and be happy to talk about that more with anybody. But we did recommend approval with conditions as far as that goes. And then also we did have, we've got another residential house application, home application in Avalanche District in the blue zone. And we also did recommend that for approval as well. So lots of stuff going on here. I really want to thank Austin and or Trustee Lashley, soon to be Commissioner Lashley, for his words last week, and Mr. Ryder for really working on the budget and getting that assistance in for the planning director. She's been swamped, as we all know, and I think just like you guys had said, all of the easiest slots here in town have been developed. I've been pointing that out for years on the board here because I work in the construction industry, and I noticed it long ago. But with all those difficult to develop lots, we have lots of applications that need really a lot of attention to detail. So I think getting this assistant in the budget is going to just help the town immensely.
Thank you very much for that update. Any other trustee updates? Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
I was just wondering, I wasn't able to attend the housing meeting that a couple weeks ago, and I wondered if anybody did and if there's a report on that.
Absolutely. Administrator Ryder, would you like to recap that, or would you prefer that I do?
We can tag team if you'd like. It was a
Awesome.
productive meeting, and Andrew Ashley's forwarded us some materials to look through. Since then, we talked about various programs, various structures, made him aware of kind of our unique challenges. So it was a good kickoff meeting. I thought there's some things to think about. I've subsequently met with a friend of Kevin Farmer's, who runs a pretty significant affordable housing program in California. He too brought up some interesting suggestions on how they approach things. I've got to start making a summary really of all this and figure out where we go next, because there is some interesting ideas forming a not-for-profit land trust, things that DOLA could potentially help us with, and things they haven't but might consider. So we just really need to keep drilling down, gathering information to find out what, if any of this is going to be suitable to put in place for Silverton to really get us kicked off. In the meantime, I think I told you, Bill McDougall and I toured every town-owned property and have some limited options at this point, but maybe some longer-term options. There's things for sale down at Anvil that potentially town could get involved in through purchase or joint venture with the county. So it's more work to do, but we've gathered some pretty good information and given us some things to think about and try to move forward.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good summary. I would add that it sounded like there may be some lower hanging fruit in terms of additional development on the county side more than the town. The work that the town has to do for affordable housing requires a few more kind of creative structures and resources than the things that were talked about with respect to the county. Simply like adding a third Anvil apartment building seems like the easiest way to add inventory to Silverton. There's another 0.8 of an acre for sale that could be an additional series of lots that could be sold the way that the county's currently selling lots. And that just seemed like the most obvious way to add inventory, but there was a lot of brainstorming going on with respect to DOLA resources that could be used to support the town and also developing town-specific projects. Trustee Birma?
Was there any other discussion about housing policy, or was it mainly a discussion revolving development options?
It was mostly about development options and resources. That said, there was a suggestion that we obtain what's called a market study light. I think that's what it was called. And for as little as like $750, we could get a pretty quick assessment from a consultant that would look at the market and give us an indication of what they thought Silverton needed and San Juan County needed in terms of types of units, price range, things like that. And it seemed surprising to everyone on the call that there was an option that was that affordable and we wouldn't need to undergo like a full viability assessment or other type of market assessment that could cost thousands of dollars. Your question about policy though, what do you have in mind, or what were you thinking?
I've become more of a proponent of the idea of a vacancy tax as a way to raise additional funding specifically to help with affordable housing and as a way to fund the development of affordable housing.
So I don't recall that as a topic of discussion, but it's definitely part of and all the policy considerations are definitely part of the discussion, or should be. Trustee Wiegert?
Yeah, if we want to talk about that a little bit more, exactly, Trustee Berman, what exactly do you mean by a vacancy tax? Is that a tax on land that does not have development on it in attempts to entice people to develop empty lots around town?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's a pretty open-ended term. It has been implemented in some cities to use for vacant lots. It's also been brought up as a use to disincentivize second home ownership. So homes that are occupied for less than, whatever length of time you'd want to put in there. So if, you were a second homeowner who only spent 3 months a year, you would be assessed an additional tax for having an unoccupied home that's not being rented or not being used for employee housing, that's just sitting empty. And with the idea that additional tax would go directly into funding more affordable housing options for local residents.
Thank you.
In turn, it would ideally stabilize and help control house prices as well. I hope that answers your question.
I was just looking for a little bit more clarification there. It's not something that I'm entirely familiar with, but it seems like there's two different ways to go about it, either by taxing vacant land or, as you say, taxing developed properties that remain vacant for a certain portion of the year.
So I think that this raises a really important topic of, the policy behind our approach towards affordable housing and maintaining the character of the community. It's definitely a much larger topic. And I know the Administrator Ryder has been thinking about different ways to facilitate that discussion, as well as projects and decisions related to it. And I see Trustee Barella has her hand up.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead,
and
Trustee
then,
Barella, sorry.
I just want to know if Jordan's tax suggestion violates anything that has to do with Tabor, or if it would have to go through a ballot vote of the community in order to push that sort of tax onto property.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one or haven't dealt with it myself, so we'd have to do the research on that to see how and if it could be implemented, if so desired. I know, for instance, down at Purgatory, we were set up differently. We were a metropolitan district, and to more heavily tax new development under our growth pays for growth motto, we set up a sub-district underneath the main metropolitan district and was able to create a differential tax base that way. In a municipality, I'm not sure what that would look like, and we'll have to do the research.
Thank you for the input, Molly. I'm not, I wouldn't have a good answer about that either, and that was definitely a question I had about that too.
and Planner Adair also asked that I mention that another topic of conversation was on the housing call, had to do with how some communities are actually requiring that there be some type of ADU or apartment included in any new development. It sounded from Dola's response that applies more to like the big luxury home markets where they're trying to make sure that staff or housekeepers or other people have housing in the community. But that was another topic of discussion as well. Trustee Lashley.
I was just going to say that this is great topic for conversation, but if we're going to have much more topic conversation, we should probably have it as noticed part of an agenda. Just so the public has the ability to participate in the discussion as well.
Agreed.
So I was going to say too.
Awesome. Thank you. And to continue with trustee reports, the only other item I have is I was asked to speak I was a panelist on the Rural Entrepreneurial Policy Summit, which happened on December 11th. I didn't totally know what I was getting myself into, but I followed Governor Polis, Phil Weiser, who's our AG, Betsy Markey, who's the executive director of the Colorado Office of Economic Development, John Hickenlooper, who's a U.S. Senator, Michael Bennett, who's a U.S. Senator, and a couple of entrepreneurs. And then I was one of three more specific, like regional representatives of communities, just talking about entrepreneurism in rural communities and how important it is. And I kind of highlighted how our whole community is kind of like a startup, and we deal with the same types of questions as entrepreneurs in terms of how do we access capital, how do we attract and retain talent, and how do we manage our growth while maintaining our character. But that was a really interesting conversation, and I was excited to be invited to participate.
Well, I'm sure you really represented Silverton well, and thank you for putting your best foot forward. Congratulations. That sounds like a major accomplishment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
And I believe that it was recorded and will be distributed at some point, but I haven't seen the link yet, and I can share that when we get it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
The only faces I recognized were AG Phil Weiser, because he was just here, and then Marcy from MSI was on there as well. Any other trustee reports? Awesome. All right. That's it for our agenda. So we'll now turn to public comment. If any of the members of the public who are watching the meeting would like to comment and you're on Zoom, please click raise hand at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none, well, thank you all for a productive meeting tonight. And thank you all who are out there watching for being part of the process and contributing to the community. And I wish everybody some wonderful holidays. Our next meeting isn't till January 11th. So let's go ski a bunch of awesome snow, hopefully that we're getting soon, and have safe and wonderful holidays. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Meeting adjourned.
Christmas, happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you all. Thank you.
Happy holidays.